Whether you are an aspiring or recently accomplished author, the Nuggets and Author's Gold will help you around all matters that pertain to self-publishing.
From the creation of a book to the business behind a book.
Introducing your host, Grant, who is an entrepreneur, speaker coach, 3-time author, and the founder of the Golden Goose Institute.
And Luyanda, who is a speaker, author, editor, author coach, and founder of Masande Sake.
Join us on a journey that will enable you to create, unearth, and share stories that matter.
Author's Gold, the home of self-publishers. Divine Keren Yamulamba was born in the capital city of the DRC, Kinshasa, but raised in the hustle and bustle of Gauteng's economic powerhouse, Pretoria. She's a miracle baby after 7 miscarried boys by her mother. This story has allowed her to bring a message of hope through spoken word, which became her calling and her career long before the age of 17. She's the author of Above and Beyond and the founder of The Sounds of Keren, which is a poetry and custom speech writing service provider aimed at translating the thoughts of clients into verses and flow. Lastly, she is a proud alumni of the University of Pretoria, having completed her undergraduate as well as her honors degree in international relations, both with a distinction. And now today, at only 24, she is a master's student in diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Keren. Divine Keren, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here, finally.
We're certainly happy to have you here.
So, Divine, you've published a book. Please tell us about it shortly before I get into my first question.
Okay, no problem. So the title of my book is Above and Beyond, Coming Out of the Common Uncommon. And it actually begins in a very autobiography mode, because I share the story of my mother and how she overcame her journey of miscarriage before finally giving birth to me. So the purpose for that is to actually intend on inspiring the reader to know that regardless of the situation they are going through, they can overcome that mountain by going above and beyond. But obviously the book goes more into detail what above and beyond would signify, in different aspects.
Oh, awesome. So now I need to know, what is your what if? So what if is why did you write your book? So the what if is, what would happen if people were a certain way? Like, for instance, in my book, it's what would happen if people were less inferior or were more confident and more in tune with themselves and had less fear. So what is your what if with writing this book?
What if people believed in the impossible, right? What if we were limitless, what if nothing could stand in our way? And I don't know where I would be if I didn't write that book, because when I first started, it wasn't really with the intention of becoming an author. These were secrets of the heart written on paper. And then I realized that, no, I can't keep this to myself. It would be an offense to the person, God, who inspired me with the ideas. So let me also use the same key, this universal key, to set other people free that have been prisoners of themselves and limiting themselves in life.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, that's, you said a lot there. I'm still stuck on that. Putting your heart on paper. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question that I'll then have for you is that now that the book's obviously out, if, however, this book was not written, right? What would have happened to you? What would you have said been the cause? Or the effects, rather, the effects of it not coming into fruition?
Right. So this is a difficult question for me because I'm not the kind of person to have backup plans in case something doesn't work. I know for a fact that it's going to work. So now I have to think, okay, so what would have happened is that, first of all, I would never ever forgive myself for not doing that because for me, it would feel like a mission, right? And you know how soldiers react when they come back from a failed mission. They're disappointed. They don't really know what more to do with their lives. So if the book didn't happen, I would still find a way to communicate that message in a non-written manner. But that's something that I have been doing in my poetry. So again, it would go back to me feeling extremely uncomfortable because the message had to be communicated on paper. I just felt the need.
So you mentioned that you of course you mentioned poetry, that's your other outlet of getting your message out. So either way, your message still needed to be written. So what goal setting techniques did you use to publish your book? Like what steps did you follow? What was your plan as you
Right. So a big shout out to the Golden Goose Institute because I don't think I would have any goal techniques if it was not for the workshop I was invited to, you know, and they made sure that at the workshop we knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into. Some of the techniques given to us, which was my favorite, is taking it one step at a time, especially with the writing process. So what I would do before the workshop is that I would allow the writer's block to affect my acceleration, basically. But it wasn't the fact that I didn't feel inspired. I wasn't trying to complete it. I was just lazing around. But after the workshop, I learned that, you know, regardless of whether this is a big thing that you're writing, an entire chapter or a paragraph, write anyways, make progress anyways, have it on paper anyways. Give yourself a time frame, like Grant used to tell us. Give yourself a time frame. Tell yourself, no, in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, I need to be done with this. That way, you're keeping yourself accountable for your own progress. But that's just one of the examples that have richly blessed my writing process. Yeah.
That's phenomenal to hear. That's phenomenal to hear. Especially that thing of just, you know, getting to a point where you start progressing and you focus less obviously on perfection. I think that is not just something we should apply to the literary works that we put out there, but definitely to our own lives as well. Those who progress will always do better than those that seek for perfection from the onset.
And I remember, I will never forget the funny thing you told us. You're like, the delete button and backspace are your worst enemies. And I'm looking at this guy for the first time, like, who does he think that is? Does he know what a perfectionist I can be? But applying that technique actually made me realize that, no, there's so much joy in writing and nobody's coming after you like at school telling you, listen, this needs to have the perfect vocab or grammar. The purpose is to just, like I said, pour out your heart. And when that is done, you can focus on the actual literature later.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And a question that I know probably people are going to be asking themselves is, how long did Divine actually take to start her book and finally complete it? How long was that?
Okay, you need to realize that I started writing when I was 8, right? So that's ages ago. And Above and Beyond was not Above and Beyond, you know, when I was 8 years old. I had the most funniest titles. I had In His Hands, and then I had Identity Crisis, and then I had Who Am I? And I look back at those titles and I laugh because I really see that there was a journey. So even though I wrote many years ago, it is only in my 20s that I started to realize that no, this can be so much more than just another book in my bag. This can actually be published. So I shared a dream with a friend. I shared a dream with a friend of mine who happens to be a mutual friend of yours. How funny is this world? And he's like, no, let me connect you to the right guy who I think is going to help you turn this dream into a material reality, a tangible reality. So he connected me to the Golden Goose Institute. I sent you, my messages, and you helped me. And in 2019, my dream came true. Yeah. So that's how many years? I cannot even count. But yeah, that is just to tell you that everybody has their own personal journey. But I know for a fact that the time it took me to realize that the book needed to be published and the time it was published was only a year long or less. But the process of the writing itself, that took forever because, we procrastinate, and that's how bad procrastination can get.
Yeah. So maybe just a quick story, and I know Luyanda is going to ask the next question. So what's interesting is that when Joe told you that, who's a mutual friend between the two of us, when he told you that, I was still trying to figure out what's Grant going to be doing with the next couple of years. Interesting enough.
Wow.
So when he tells me that, when he picks that up, in my mind, I'm also thinking, what's going on here? How come he's confident in something that I'm still trying to articulate inside my mind? Whilst that is obviously running along, Luyanda is busy pressing me and saying, you need to hold a workshop. You need to hold a workshop. When are you going to hold your first workshop? So all of these pressures are around. And with those pressures obviously come with a certain amount of faith. And I'm still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
So when I talk about that whole, progress over perfection, I really, really mean it, because I literally did not know what I was doing. It's surprising where we are right now.
But I think it's really, sorry to cut you, I think it's really good to surround yourself with people who sometimes believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Because they will challenge you to really step up your game. Thank you, Luyanda, for really pressing on the issue of hosting a work. For me, that was the only, back then I wasn't impressed with technology. Let's meet online, virtual workshops. I wasn't that type of person. I needed to see the mentor face to face. So when Grant finally made that decision, not only did I give myself a chance to believe again, but I believed in him, I believed in what he was standing for. Yeah.
So it's funny, like with that workshop, because I mean, you came to the very first one.
Yeah.
We were still trying to figure ourselves out. Like,
well, guys, now you tell me. I thought it was like what, stand one?
The very first one, but here we are. So you mentioned that you started writing your book at not at 8 o'clock, when you were 8, and so that's quite early. But did you do any research? Because you mentioned that it's also about your mom's journey through miscarriage. But did you do any research, and how much research would you recommend for new writers?
Okay, so in terms of research, I would say, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when people hear the word research, they think school, they think sitting down and clicking stuff on Google, but research can really be branched into different things. My research was spending time with my mother, literally, and listening to the story and being patient with her and letting her talk and not interrupting any new ideas that came in the process, because sometimes she would remember, sometimes she needed a bit more time to recollect her memories of the past, because this happened a very long time ago. And then when I was done with that, obviously that didn't happen like during my childhood and teenage years, because back then I just wrote for the sake of writing. But when I arrived at, my very late 10s, so let's say 19 and 20, I said, no, man, I need to be a bit more professional with my works. I also want to do actual reading of other books and other people that had written on autobiographies about their parents or themselves or a celebrity. I also went to do some research on miscarriage because that was the main theme. So I can't talk about something that I am not familiar with, especially because I've not acquainted the situation myself. I was only a product, of the situation. And so the reading, the speaking to my mother, it all helped. What I can tell writers, especially the fresh ones, is don't limit your research to just Googling stuff online. So you need to know exactly what it is that you are writing about and ensure that you have different sources of information communicating to you what it is that you want to tell your audience. So for instance, with me, I was sharing a story on miscarriage, but that wasn't just it. I also needed to think about what are people going to learn from miscarriage, because I'm not about to make this another depressing book on someone's shelf and there's nothing behind it. So I went to do research on bravery and courage, what it took to be courageous. I'm a Christian, so my biggest source of information was the Bible as well, and looking at the different heroes that came out of very uncomfortable situations, yet they overcame their situations in an uncommon way.
Awesome. There was a lot of depth there. A lot of
Thank you.
And probably a question that now people are obviously asking is that, so definitely work on the research. And I also agree with you in that regard. I think that if you're somebody who wants to put work out there, find out what other people have more or less done, not for copy's sake, but to add more depth to your work. As authors, as speakers, really what people pay you for is how you command your words. I have a strong belief in that, and how you structure your words. So it's not enough just to put your words in it's why did I put this word here, this word here, this word here? What type of imagery am I trying to put into the reader's mind? So being well researched allows for that transition to happen, especially if you want to formulate an idea into that of your reader. So the next question that I have for you is that when it comes down to marketing your book and so forth, how are you currently going about that? A question that I know aspiring authors obviously, are keen to understand. Let me squeeze a quick message here. Listen, if you are aspiring to publish a book, have a look in the description for our Quicket link to see when the next workshop is. We do both online and face-to-face meetings. Take your dream from potential to reality. Book your seat at our next workshop. Looking forward to seeing you there. And remember, the world needs to hear your story and learn from your truth. So write it and then publish it. Now back to the show.
So, and being an author during the pandemic can be one of the most stressful things that none of us none of us expected. And this is very funny. I had my book launch just a month before it was announced that we would go on lockdown forever. And not forever, but yeah, you get the point. So I took advantage of that time. I sold as many books as I could. However, I had no idea that I would also be put in an uncomfortable situation where I couldn't see the audience that I was speaking to anymore. And I had to make a plan on how to get the word out there that I had a book without necessarily stepping into anyone's door or meeting them face to face. So I had to shift the uncomfortable transition from contact marketing to virtual marketing. And, looking at that problem, I had to take advantage of my talents, my other talents. And that was speaking, not just poetry, but speaking. So wherever I went, be it an invitation I had received to host a meeting, be it a short speech I had to give, I would always include my book and the details about my book, where to find my book, where to find me. And after those particular seminars, those Instagram lives, those Facebook lives, people would contact me, hey, where are you? How can I get your book? And that's when I would send them the details and I'd be able to send them the book. So in that regard, I just want to encourage authors who find themselves in the pandemic. You're not too sure what marketing strategy to use. I would first say don't panic and don't let the circumstances define you. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and expect a dream to develop, but it's not growing. So don't be afraid to use other mediums to get through to people. Look at the different platforms that you have before you. How can you create your own platform? Because if I also relied on invitation, people were not going to see me much. So I had to create a platform of my own. That's when Heart to Heart, which is my very own baby, my Instagram Live podcast, was released, because I really wanted people to get to know the author more. But whenever I hosted that live, people would always ask me about my book. So they got the best of both worlds, me and my book.
Wow. I feel like you were speaking to me there about not panicking and actually tapping into other mediums. It's okay. I got your message loud and clear.
I sincerely believe that we as humans are multi-talented, and we sometimes limit ourselves to just one thing because that's working out at the moment. But there is a reason why you know how to sing and write. So you don't neglect the singing when the writing is going good, because you might just use the platforms that got you in front of a singing audience to also get them to buy your book. So don't neglect, the different platforms that are before you.
All right.
All right. Okay. So the next question is, have you been able to create a business from your book? Because it's one of the things that we speak about at the workshop that you mentioned earlier, is that it's good to write your book, but at times you don't really make a living from your book. You make
living because of it.
Yes, because of it. That's the one. Of it. So yes, have you been able to do that?
So, and this is such big news, I have. But I wouldn't say a business out of my book. I would say a business from the skills I learned, in publishing my book. So after my book was out and I was happy, I sat down with myself and I began to observe the gaps in my own community. And one of the things that I realized is that, yes, we have publishing companies, we have printing companies, but we don't have a lot of writers writing biographies. And there are people everywhere that want their stories to be written, but they don't have the time. They don't have the time and they don't believe they have the adequate skills for it. So I told myself, why not, gather one or two ghostwriters who, will be used, well, not like used, but who will use their skills to sit down with someone who desperately wants to write their story or wants to share their story and write that book for them. Obviously, I could not gather many ghostwriters. I had to be the first one. I had to be the example of what I believed in. So one day, this is such a miracle, a woman contacted me. She's like, "Are you Divine? I saw your book. I really liked it. I think you're an incredible writer. Would you mind writing my book? I am a businesswoman. I don't have time. I'm always traveling. But I think if we set up meetings every month, you can get a book out." So I'm like, okay, why not? As soon as she told me the pay, I'm like, do you even have to ask? So we sat down and we talked. We talked like two friends who talked, but obviously I was recording and I was writing. And as we are speaking, her book is ready.
Sweet.
Her book is ready. A book that I write it, but obviously I'm not taking any credit for that. It's her story that matters the most. And I really, really don't mind, because I believe that everyone has a story. And just because you're unable to write it doesn't mean you can't find the right people to do that for you. So out of that came the Psalms of Keren. The Psalms of Keren used to just be limited to poetry and how we could help couples write their vows for the wedding, how we could help, students finish their papers if they were facing writer's block. But now it has expanded to ghostwriting for wannabe authors that can't write, basically. Yeah.
So that's extremely powerful, and if anything, it highlights the whole, whatever pains you face, if you can find the solutions to them, someone else is going to be willing to pay for them.
Absolutely.
So it's
I believe that where there is a need, there is a business.
Absolutely.
So if you can find the gap within your community, I think that you can find your firm, you can find your organization, you can find your whatever it is that you want to start.
Absolutely. But as you also would have found out, it's a matter of you first making sure you succumb to the mountains that are in front of you, and as a result, you're able to succumb those that other people's and so forth. So well done for that. I think whatever businesses we get outside of our books usually aren't always correlated with our books initially. Eventually it will happen, but the first is just, you did this, help me do this also. And
it's amazing, because I thought that I had gotten rid of the golden goose after after my book launch, but never. I actually ended up meeting, or should I say, speaking to Luyanda, who helped me, for the beginning of the process of that book. So I became a mediator for publishing firms like you. Obviously, you're my number one. Can't replace you. So I became the mediator between the clients and the publishing companies. If they needed help with the editing, you would be the one that I ran to. If they felt comfortable with their own words and they didn't need editing, I would stay put. But what I would like to say is we also need to play a role in helping one another, in not being afraid to be a channel of blessing for other people. Because if you're just going to be selfish with your own solution, you might be missing the point of what impact can do.
Absolutely. So last question that we have for you, before we obviously ask for your handles and where people can find you and this awesome book, including all your services as well, Madam Business Owner, is looking back, right? Before you actually sat down, so we're still in 2019, and let's say we're even before the workshop. Knowing what you know now, what words would you have shared with Keren at that specific point in time?
I would have told her to not be afraid to risk it all for her dreams. Back then I was very hesitant about taking a further step. Because remember, I'm a Praetorian. I've been in Pretoria for as long as I could breathe. But your workshop was in Johannesburg. I was not familiar with Johannesburg. I was scared of Johannesburg. As a woman that was comfortable in my little nest, I didn't find the need of going all the way for my dreams. I just wanted to stay in one place. and I expected the dreams to walk in and just embrace me, but I had to learn to go after them. So when they told me that the workshop was in Johannesburg, I said, Divine, put away your comfort zoneness, put away your fears, and go after what you are looking for. And I would keep on telling myself that if I had a chance to talk to the old me, don't be afraid, and don't put self-imposed limitations upon yourself. Keep on pushing, and don't be afraid to spend a little. No offense. Honestly, I think that when people come with their dreams and they approach publishing companies, they approach the people that can help them, the moment they see a quotation, they panic and then they disappear. But you need to know what you want and how bad do you want this, Don't be afraid to put the work where it belongs, because it's going to be worth it. I mean, it's worth it now. So why would you even consider giving up?
Well, that's powerful. And just to add with that, with the quotation bit, there's a person I was listening to, and one of the things that they mentioned was that as entrepreneurs, whatever you're willing to spend or pay, your threshold is basically what you're willing to accept from clients and so forth. So asking for a bill of 30 grand when you've never actually done that, there's a bit of, in your mind, there's a bit of, okay, should I be asking this much? I've never spent this much, and can go on and on and on. But if you're someone who's willing to spend for your dreams, in this case, you requiring people to pay for this becomes an easy transition. So you hold a good part, not only just for the sake of you going for your dreams, but also holding people accountable in pursuing theirs as well. All right. So where can we find you? Where can we find you and this wonderful work of art?
So you can find me in many platforms, actually in all your social media platforms. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under the same name, Divine Keren. As easy as that. So Divine Keren, and it's Divine with an I, please, not an E. People always misspell my name. And you can also find me on my website at www.thepsalmsofkeren.co.za. www.thepsalmsofkeren.co.za. You can write to us an email if you need help, with the writing process of your book. info@thepsalmsofkeren.co.za. Otherwise, we can talk anywhere else, and we'll get straight to that point in our conversation. You can find Above and Beyond on Amazon. Otherwise, you can use any of those social media platforms you heard to speak to me on how we can arrange sending you a book where you are. It doesn't matter whether you're in South Africa or around the world. It's definitely possible.
Keren, thank you for gracing us today. We highly appreciate it, and we love the growth that you've had from 2019. You're going to be used as a case study now for our workshops when it comes down to can we develop a business from these books.
I love it.
Really, really proud of you. And I know one of the things I'm learning, especially now that I've come to these 30s, is how time is when it comes down to time, it basically works itself out. So 10 years from now, whatever it is that you're up to, it'll only magnify. I can promise you that much. So keep going.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and for giving me this opportunity.
It's a wrap. Don't forget to write to us at info@thegoldengooseinstitute.com. We want to know what you liked, learned, and what you would want to hear more about. Author's Gold, the home of self-publishers.